Welcome back to Producer's Toolbox. I'm your host, Carol Adrian, and today I am thrilled to have a very special guest, Jessica Case, who, with her husband Claiborne Hancock, is the publisher of Pegasus Books, and they made it possible for me to publish my book. It was a fascinating experience. It was a lot of work, and today I know so many people who are writers, who want to be writers, who have something in the works. And we're all curious about how does that book get published? How does it even get to a publisher? So we have the perfect person to discuss this with. Jessica Case, welcome to Producer's Toolbox, and thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, hi, Carol. It's good to be here.
Well, first, let's talk a little bit about what a publisher does, what's involved, and then we'll talk about how a writer gets to you.
Sure. So I guess, maybe I can kind of walk through, how the manuscript, on your computer, eventually becomes a book on a bookstore shelf. So, we will get a submission from usually an author's agent, and, we get a lot of submissions, but, we'll review it, go through it, and it has to kind of meet our specific criteria, right? Both as a subject or an area or a genre we think we can do well. And then, obviously we think that, it's got the right level of editorial quality. And if all the stars align, we'll make an offer to the agent, work out a contract, and then we're kind of off to the races. And then the author and I and one of our other editors will kind of work together to kind of polish up the manuscript to exactly where we want it to be. We'll work with our copy editor to kind of further polish it more. If it's a nonfiction book that requires images, we'll get that sorted out and designed with our production head, get the book typeset, designed, proofread, and then we send it to press. While that's all going on, we are in tandem talking to our sales team, and their job is to go out with, a sales sheet on the book and go out to all the retail accounts across America, maybe Canada, and get the stores excited. So, they pitch Amazon, they pitch Barnes & Noble, they'll pitch wholesalers that supply books to the local indies, they pitch your local library, they might pitch specialty retailers. So it's a huge job. There's a lot of books out there. But they really kind of they essentially hit the ground and try to get the book in stores. And then when the book comes off press, it lands in our warehouse, and our warehouse team will be responsible for kind of filling all those purchase orders that the accounts have, sent in over the past couple of months. Those are publicists who will be working on getting reviews for the book because, it could be the best book in the world. If nobody knows about it, nobody's going to buy it. So, you've got to get some media attention somehow, whether it's reviews or interviews or podcasts or radio or social media, just depending on the kind of book it is. And then, ideally those reviews and that media will start hitting right around pub just as the book is placed on the shelf. It's a long process. I think from the day a manuscript is formally delivered to us, right? If the author has written a book on proposal and then the book is turned in, from that point, it's 9 to 12 months before we publish it. So it takes a long time, but it's worth it.
It really is. I was so surprised by, for one thing, the exacting nature of that preparation. And like when I went over my own manuscript a million times and I thought, oh, I hope they say we've never had copy this clean. Well, 6 copy editors later and about 3,000 commas, It was way better than what I had on my computer. But I didn't realize how huge that team is. The artists, the publicists, it's remarkable.
Mm-hmm. No, it definitely takes a village, and there's always a lot of eyes. Ideally, a lot of eyes on the book. Obviously, it's a big process, and bigger houses maybe can have more eyes, which is even better. So I think more eyes is always better. Even when we do the cold read right before we go to press, they always find something because they're just looking at the book fresh. And then you do all that, and every once in a while you get someone helpful writing something on Amazon saying that like there's a period missing on page 67, and you're like, so.
It's true. I mean, because you're dealing with, well, literally millions of characters,
Hmm.
or hundreds of thousands anyway, in any given book. And and it has to be too, and I'm so glad you guys work within very exacting guidelines, and
Yeah.
you really get the best quality. I notice now a, a reader, and boy, if I spot a misplaced comma in somebody else's book, I'm like, well, clearly they're not with Pegasus. But anyway, it's, but I got to you in an unusual way too. And I wanted to, I thought to everybody out there who's got a book in them, this is really part of the process in our country anyway. I, um, I thought you can't really approach a publisher with any hope of having your work looked at without a literary agent. You really need that entree. And so I Googled literary agents in New York City. I figured let's start at the top. And I did, and I found a wonderful agent. I actually sent it to someone else, and he gave it to the person who became my agent.
Hmm.
And when the manuscript was finished, and or when the proposal was finished, and I had completed it to his standards, and he said, I am pleasantly surprised. He
Hmm.
took it, and he had a few publishers in mind. And when he came back and he said, I really would suggest that you go with Pegasus because they make beautiful books. They are very precise and they will work with you at every level from the cover to the index. And he was right. And it was a long process. And it was as long in the editing process on the way to being published as it was writing the thing.
Yeah.
So, but I have also talked to so many people, really hopefuls. How did you get an agent? I mean, I Googled, and the bigger agencies had an online submission process, which is how I went. So I picked one, I sent it to him. He said, oh no, this is my friend's genre.
Mhm.
How does that really work? What would you suggest for a first time author?
Sure. So, I think the bigger literary agencies you can find, probably just by, searching them online and, you can follow their submission process. Another good resource is someplace called Publishers Marketplace. And it's where when an agent and an editor do a deal, they'll post it, right? So it's a way for editors to get out show what kind of books they're requiring. It's an agent way to kind of advertise and show the industry what kind of books that they're selling. And people will scout on there like film agents and things like that. So you can kind of go through and look at those those deal memos. I think you do have to pay a small subscription, but you can look at those deal memos and those deal columns and say like, oh, this agent is selling these kinds of books. So it's a great resource to kind of go through and see who's really specializing in whether it's history or horror or science fiction or debut fiction, memoir. So you can kind of look at it that way. And I mean, I think it's really akin to applying for a job, right? You really have to look at the agents, see what they're requiring. I think, it's great to see a very experienced agent that has, multiple New York Times bestsellers, Pulitzer Prize winners, but they're older. They probably have all their clients that they really want. So the new clients that they take on, it'll really have to be something that speaks to them. But maybe a younger agent who doesn't have quite as many clients under their belt yet, they're really trying to grow their client list. That's probably, in my opinion, would be almost a better place to start because they're hungry, right? They're looking to build their client list. They're looking to build those deals. Someone who's been in the business for 50 years, they're like, do I need any more clients? So would be one way to start. And I think too, to view it like applying for a job. I hear agents tell me a lot that the submissions they receive, their name is spelled wrong. There's typos in there, so make it polished, right? You wouldn't submit your CV or your resume with mistakes on it. The same would apply for this process too. So
I really am primarily a producer. And
Mhm.
so I work with a lot. I write a lot of grant proposals. And I've been fortunate in having some of them accepted so that I've been able to make the kinds of television I would like to make. But I was told by a very high up person at a division of Disney years ago. She said, we can tell by the cover of the proposal if we want to read it or not. And exactly like you're saying, she said, you have typos in the first couple pages. Like, it says a lot about, how precise you are. And she said, it just saves us from reading it. So I always tell that to other people writing proposals, that get it as perfect as you can get it, because it says a lot. And I have since seen scripts and proposals with errors right on the cover, easy ones.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's hard. We know, obviously we're all human and stuff slips through, right? We've had mistakes, but it's do the best you can, right? To try to really make it clean. So
well, how would we tell? Like, I never thought about that before, but a newer, younger literary agent who's hungry for clients, how do we determine that? Or do you start with the genre? Like, if you're writing a murder mystery, you want to.
Yeah, I would start with the genre. Yeah, start with the genre first. And then, you can look at, you'd find an agent who's recently done some deals in that genre. And I think once you kind of look up their agency and their website, you can probably tell how long they've been in the game, how many clients they have. You can probably kind of figure out, where they are kind of early to mid career, so, and of course, early in their career, they're probably busy a lot with assisting and being kind of apprenticing kind of the senior agents there. Publishing is very much an apprentice internship, but yeah, cast a wide net. I think there's a lot of, there'll be a lot of querying that happens at this stage of the process. So
I was kind of surprised because I thought that the literary agent, that I would have to give him a completed manuscript to show to potential publishers. But there wasn't. There was that long proposal process in between. I think the proposal was like 60 pages, or it was long. And so I thought, so when you get it, are you mostly dealing with the proposals, or are you dealing with the complete manuscripts?
When we receive it, usually for nonfiction, it's proposal for nonfiction. And if the manuscript is ready, they'll say it, but usually they like to send the proposal first. It's kind of easier to digest and, see all the lovely comp titles and things like that. And it also gives the editor some opening in case, they want to maybe massage the direction of the book. It's not wholly set in stone. Fiction is almost always delivered complete, though. That's different. You need the full manuscript for fiction. Unless, of course, you've worked with someone for years and years, and it's like the seventh crime novel in a series that perhaps could be on outline or proposal. But for fiction, usually, especially literary fiction, it needs to be done. So,
what about illustrations? Is that something that gets decided later in the process, or that the author or literary agent comes to you with them in place?
I think usually they'll say that they're pending, right? If the author wants illustrations and stuff, it'll be like the author can supply 8 to 16 images or something like that, so that way everyone's on the same page. Say this publisher has a hard line, we don't have budget for images, that's not going to be a good fit. So it's good to know it beforehand, so that way nobody ends up unhappy.
I remember I'm kind of used to it with documentary, that you really have to be sure that you have the releases and the permissions for any illustrations that you're planning on using.
Yeah.
Is there anything that one needs to watch out for with quotations as well?
Yeah, I mean, fair use is tricky. There's no kind of hard and set rule. It's always like, does this comprise the essence of the work, or, more than 30%? For longer books and articles, kind of standard quotation practices with standard citations are fine. The tricky thing is poetry and song lyrics, but especially poetry. So, because, say you have a 7-line poem, you quote 3 lines from this poem, that is the essence of the work. That does kind of fall outside fair use. So, it's every case is unique. That's kind of a non-answer.
Oh, because you could pull three lines that make the point in your book, but it's not what the poet intended with those lines. Is that
Sure. And also, it does comprise, if the poem is only 7 lines, obviously you've taken more than 30%. And is that kind of, taking the essence of the work, even if it's credited, if the poem is only 7 lines, so it's a tricky thing. And I think better to be safe than sorry, especially where kind of shorter things are concerned.
What kind of wisdom would you offer to people like preparing to hopefully publish for the first time? Somebody coming without that kind of background.
Sure. I think to read widely, read critically, read widely in the area that you're hoping to publish in, see what's worked, see what seems to be working, read the book reviews in the, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, see what's being covered, see how your work might fit in. I think that's a great thing. And I think there's a big community too in a lot of places. There's big children's books community, there's big crime fiction communities, writers groups. I think to tap into that community as well as you're kind of reading widely in the area you hope to get into is a great way to build connections, build community too. I know a lot of our writers really depend on their writers groups when they're working on their drafts. They become kind of this like second family. So I think that helps, build that confidence, build that community, you build connections. But to read critically too, when you're reading something that you pick up in the library, what do you like? What don't you like? What works for you? What doesn't? How could you bring that to your own work?
I know several people who have attempted or have actually written children's books.
Mm-hmm.
And when somebody tells me that they want to write a children's book or they're working on it, and I always ask them what age, to what age is it targeted? And no one has ever been able to just say, oh, 6 to 8. Well, all ages. But
Yeah.
it's a very precise thing. I know I have a nephew in Nevada, and he's 8, and I've sent him a book a month since he was born. And all those, I find them, I say, best book for 6-year-old boys, and you get a whole selection, but it's really very carefully assessed and compartmented, isn't it?
Yeah. No, it's we don't publish children's books. I'm not as knowledgeable, I think, as I would like. However, yes, there's a lot of different tiers of children's publishing. There's books that you're really marketing it to parents, right? Because they're the ones that buy the book, right? So, that's maybe kind of a more general picture book. And then there's books that are really targeted, especially when you're doing kind of learning to read, reading on your own. There's specific word and vocabulary benchmarks that you need to be above or below in order to qualify for a certain grade level. So if you're writing specifically for early readers, and school librarians and the ones who kind of shelve it and recommend it to children or even in the bookstore, right? They want it to be, have a certain style of vocabulary so that children, it fits with their reading level. And then there's the next level up. And then there's kind of early readers, middle grade, young adult, kind of it. And they all have these, I mean, I think once you get to young adult, then it's more kind of style and theme, but there's those kind of benchmarks for elementary school age children, which we don't know much about, but it is actually pretty rigorous. So.
Yeah, I'm surprised at how many people really have that desire to write children's books. And I just buy them. But I notice on all those covers or on the back cover, it gives you an age range. Right now, my nephew's into Diary of a Wimpy Kid. We're up to number 5.
Yeah. My kids love those.
Oh, really? I didn't realize they were graphic novels. I said, oh my gosh, this is like the gateway to anime.
Exactly.
But well, in the realm of grown-up books that you guys do, what do you find the most fun or interesting to work with?
Goodness. So I think we've always published pretty widely and eclectically because when something's up, something else might be down. Nonfiction is always pretty steady for us. There's always an appetite for medieval history, biography. We just had a book about a Tudor history that's done really well. We just had a biography of Harriet Tubman that we just published for Black History Month, which has been, was on the Today Show on Friday, which has been really exciting. But, in the summer, fiction might be more immersive, more popular. Fiction can kind of run a little more hot cold, right? If a novel really takes off, it can really work. Whereas sometimes if it doesn't break out right away, there's more challenges. But, you never know what can stick. So we always try to, publish a broad range of things. And, it's fun for me too, to kind of work on different stuff. If I've just edited a true crime, then maybe my next book, I need to have it be kind of, something cozier where nobody's, peeled with a potato peeler or something like that. So.
Oh, that I know your website is pretty exciting. I mean, you really publish a wide range of books and you republish some older classics as well, which I'm always kind of excited to see. But what can authors do if you have agreed to or offered to publish a given book? Mm-hmm. What can that author do to support what you're doing to get it onto the shelves?
Sure. So I think, building their kind of grassroots network, right? So if it's a fiction book, being in touch with that community, getting to know your local bookstore, say it's a crime novel, right? The crime fiction I mentioned specifically because they have a great community, right? There's lots of conventions and things like that. So going to these things, you meet other people, you end up meeting librarians and booksellers and stuff. And so you can kind of get the word of mouth out. It helps with blurbs, that now you're friendly with all these different writers. And for nonfiction, going to conventions or knowing what historical societies are really interested in this book, museums, and getting to know those people, right? So when we pitch them for, say, an event or a talk, they already say, oh, I already know Bob. He's fantastic. Da-da-da. It's not this cold pitch where they've never heard of this person before. And then it makes, our publicist's job more difficult. They'll already kind of know you and know that you're an expert in the field. You can carry an event and you have the right credentials to do so. So I think kind of getting out there, in a deliberate way, is the best way to help us, as we work our different channels. And of course, a lot of our writers are journalists or already work in media, in which case, I always tell them now's the time to call in all the favors, to put it in front of different producers or editors to get coverage off the book page. So.
Well, the Pegasus machine really introduced me to a whole new realm. Well, your amazing publicist, Julia Romero, has been terrific. Mm-hmm. And so she somehow got me into the community of Civil War roundtables and museums and mm-hmm. Civil War publications. So I've given lots of I call them visual lectures, presentations with lots of slides. But that is the community who loves that. My topic, Civil War, medicine, but mm-hmm. so many people are not just interested, but really have educated themselves about it. And they're an interesting audience. But they then, it always surprises me when I go someplace to give a talk and they have copies of my book. Yeah. They've actually read it. Yeah. So that's been a very interesting thing. And then people send you, just this morning, somebody from a talk I did a couple of months ago sent something I had mentioned, Dr. Silas Weir Mitchell from Philadelphia. And mm-hmm. he scrounged in their past journals and found a good article about it and sent it to me. But yeah, I think you kind of have to know your genre and who your people are.
Exactly. And that comes from what, kind of what I had said earlier, like reading widely, reading critically. Books are not ever in a vacuum. So yeah, knowing what else is out there, who's reading it, who's attracted to these books, because obviously we're all hoping for Reese Witherspoon or Jenna Bush to come down and anoint the book. But, you can buy some lotto tickets while you're at it. So I think it's, you kind of we can't wait for that to happen. We have to kind of build our own, build our own luck, as the saying goes.
Wow. And it is, I think that applies to so many aspects of life with making your own luck. I think Ina Garten has a great quote about that. Be ready when the luck happens. That's what
Exactly.
it is. But,
Exactly.
great. Oh, this has been so interesting. But Jessica, do you have one piece of advice or encouragement or inspiration to sign us off with to all those aspiring authors?
Goodness, I think books are a long game, right? There'll be frustrations, early in the process, later in the process, someplace in the middle. We see it too. But I think if you believe in something, and we believe in all the books that we take on, good things can happen. So even if something doesn't work out right away, try to figure out why, adapt, and I think eventually it'll pay off.
That's great advice. Thank you so much.
Great.
So to everybody out there, just remember, so you're going to need a literary agent. You can't play Jessica with manuscripts. Take it through the process. But we're going to put up the URLs for Publishers Weekly and Publishers Marketplace at the end of the episode. So you can go to those websites and take a look and do the research. And hopefully we'll see your books on the shelves.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Thanks, Carol.
We will look forward to seeing you next time on Producer's Toolbox.